Thank you for that beautiful music, Claire, for being here with us today. I've heard Claire at Unity and suggested to Debbie and the crew that we invite her to come here, and I think you've just done a great job. So today we're talking about the heart. The heart knows what the heart wants, but are we listening? And so we're talking about ways to open our heart today, ways to listen. And as Dennis read, some of the stuff I'm talking about today is from this book, A Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield, who was a monk. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as I go through this today. So how would it be to let Spirit flower every day in your life? How would that be, to let Spirit flower every day in your life, to really let goodness penetrate your life, to penetrate it, to imbue it, to saturate it, to infuse it? You know what I'm talking about? Really live it. You know, sometimes we kind of go through life in a kind of a vanilla way. And what we're talking about here is really allowing ourselves, allowing our hearts to be open and really be permeated with this goodness of life. So how would that look? So Jack Kornfield decided to be a monk. He left his home in the United States and he goes over to Tibet. He studies, he becomes a monk, and then he goes to Thailand, where he goes into this forest monastery. And he'd heard all kinds of things about what happens there, you know, and he wasn't expecting really to levitate, but he thought maybe, you know, thought miraculous things would happen. He'd have these extraordinary experiences, so he's all set for that. But instead, he was offered a way of life, a lifelong path of awakening, surrender, and commitment, kind of like the rest of us. You know, he wasn't exempt from everyday life. We all have these ups and downs in our life. We're always going to have that. We don't ever have to think, oh, I just thought now I would not have any problems because I've reached this level of my spirituality. That's not the way life works. We're going to be given some challenges, keeps life interesting, keeps us on our toes, and that's what life is. We're going to be confronting these challenges throughout our life. So he was a little surprised, and we're all reminded that for the most part, we're just going to be continually facing these challenges. So it's our perspective. You know, how do we look at these challenges? When a problem comes up, do we say, oh no, I thought I was over these problems, I'm going to crawl under the sheets again and forget about it? No. You know, we look at these problems, say, I have a power within me, and I can tackle whatever it is that comes my way today. We don't necessarily have to let our circumstances steal our joy. I love that. I say that sometimes if I feel like somebody's stealing my joy. I say, nothing, nobody can steal my joy. It's inside of me. It doesn't depend on outward circumstances. That joy is within me. Now, I'm thinking that since I mentioned that this guy was a Buddhist monk, this Jack Kornfield, you might still be mulling that over. Why are we listening to instructions from a Buddhist monk here at CSL Minneapolis this morning? Well, I want to give you just a little bit of a tutorial on Buddhism. And for those of you that are studying to be a minister, one of the classes that we all have to take is called World Religions, and this one is included. And so what I have here are notes from the class I took about world religion, and I use them all the time when I want to remind myself, what is Buddhism about again? What's Islam? And just a little refresher. And I've talked to people in this room in different gatherings of science of mind people who say, well, I consider myself a Buddhist, but I can very easily apply all the stuff we are taught here at our Science of Mind Center. So there's a lot of things that fit. One of the things that we have in common with Buddhism is personal experience is the final test of truth. Personal experience. And I often say that. The only thing I really know is what I've experienced. I mean, there's other stuff I might believe, like life after death. I believe that this essence of that power that is within me and everybody, I believe that that goes on after this shell of a body dies, yet I've never experienced it. So I don't, I believe that. I believe it, and the reason I believe it is if yesterday at our gathering to do our vision board stuff, was fun because we had people that were saying, here's what happened to me. And when you hear people saying what happened to them and just these incredible coincidences or incredible miraculous stuff that happens, it just makes you think there's a power in the universe that can do that in, through, and as us. Perhaps that same power lives on after we die. So I believe that that's kind of what we have one of the things we have in common with Buddhism, that this personal experience is the final test of truth. Another one is this scientific element, attention to the cause and effect of life's experiences. That's a Buddhism thing, and certainly we talk about it all the time, cause and effect. We plant those seeds into that law of life, and that's what we outpicture in our lives. Cause and effect happens every day to everyone. And then Buddhism is pragmatic or practical, just like we think our teaching is. It teaches, if teachings weren't useful tools, there'd be no use. What we use here are practical things that we can use every day in our life, every day. I've heard other more conservative friends of mine say, yeah, I wish that we would talk a little bit more or hear a little bit more about, yes, and here's how you can use this message every day in your life, how you can put it to work today. And in some churches, that doesn't come out very much. It's more about our salvation versus how we can live our day-to-day life today. Another thing is the psychological, dealing with our human problems here and now. That's what Buddhism does, and that's what we do too. And egalitarianism. The Buddhists don't believe in the caste system. And we too like to think we open our arms and everybody is welcome and we don't exclude anybody. Right speech, that's part of the teachings of Buddhism. Well, that's part of that book that we like to study called The Four Agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Pay attention to what you're saying. Right mindfulness. All we are is the results of what we have thought. All things can be mastered by mindfulness. That's Buddhism, and that's certainly what we teach too. Right concentration. Oh, I didn't know if I should include this because I have trouble saying this word. With the extirpation, that means getting rid of delusion, craving, and hostility, we see that things were not as bad as they were supposed to be. I mean, that's Buddhism, and this is what we teach too. Let it go. If it doesn't serve me, anything that doesn't serve me, let it go. Be willing to let it go. So that's just a little bit about Buddhism and why we listen to the teachings of somebody like Jack Kornfield. And the other thing that I feel like I have in common with Jack Kornfield is that one of the things he did, he said he used the strength of mind in meditation to suppress painful feelings and all too often didn't recognize that he was angry or sad or grieving or frustrated till a long time later. And I've been a master at that. I've been a stuffing master. Learned that when I was married to my first husband. And I did that because I found that if I expressed my anger, I sometimes paid for it physically. So I learned to zip it. And I took that to the nth degree, of course, and zipped it, any feeling that came up. I didn't recognize it. I did not recognize when I was angry. Did not recognize when I was sad. It really kind of, you become this unfeeling kind of a post. And apparently this is what Jack Kornfield did too. He went into meditation and he just, let's stuff all that stuff. Let's not deal with the stuff that's painful. So the first step being, I became willing to understand the importance of allowing myself to feel those feelings that I thought were better stuffed. Allow myself, and even today, when I'm feeling something, even if it's a feeling of sadness or even if it's a feeling of anger, I sometimes say, oh my gosh, I'm having a feeling. And I embrace it, and I admit to it. And I deal with it, but in a different way. I don't stuff it. I look at it and say, wow. And usually that, for me, that's writing it down. I'm feeling this right now. And how do I want to deal with it? Blah, 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 blah. And I know the tools, so I can do that in a positive and a constructive way versus stuffing them. So, and Jack Kornfield dealt with it by shifting his practice down the chakras from the mind to his heart. And I think that's kind of what I did too when I just allowed Spirit to guide me in dealing in a healthier way with this stuffing of my feelings. Jack Kornfield says, we need a warrior's heart that lets us face our lives directly, our pains and our limitations, our joys and possibilities. Then we can include every aspect of our life in our spiritual practice, our body, our thoughts about the environment, art, education, everything can be integrated spiritually into our lives. Just, we're all, it all comes under that one umbrella of knowing that one power is within us. We are, it is in, as, and through us, and no matter what element of our life we're going through, we can use that spirituality to get us through it. So we might ask, is my path a path with heart? Are we dealing with our individual challenges or problems? Are we dealing with it with our heart? And to me, it's about following that still small voice. And sometimes we have to be quiet in order to hear that still small voice. Just take some time. Don't, I've made it a habit not to have the TV on or the radio on. Just have quiet in my house so that I can spend time. If I have a down moment, I can listen. What's going on? Is there a direction I need to go? What's going on in my life? Jack Kornfield tells the story in this book about a guy he got to know. The guy was 30 years old, and he was rich. He's already rich. He had all kinds of money. He was, I think he was in the construction business, but he made a lot of money. He had all kinds of toys. He had the BMW, and he had the condos, and he had the townhouses, and he had the yachts, and he had all the playthings. He was doing good. He was just living high. And then he's driving his BMW one day, and he blacked out. And turned out he had a melanoma, a brain tumor. And it was very serious. And he's in the hospital, and Jack Kornfield has come to visit him. And this guy says, well, now here's what the doctor told me. The doctor says, we want to operate on you, but we'll warn you that if we take this tumor out, you may lose all your ability to read, to write, to speak, to understand any language. And we want to do this tomorrow morning, so you let us know. And so Jack Hornfield's with him that night. And, you know, this guy didn't want to talk about his cars and his houses and his boats and all the fun he's having in the world. No. He had taken some kind of a Zen class 20 years prior to that. What this guy wanted to talk about was life and death. He wanted to talk about the possibility of dying. He wanted to talk about what would my life be like if I didn't have these functions that the doctor is warning me about. He finally said, you know, I probably had enough of talking. You know, maybe I'm done with that part of my life. And he ended up telling the doctor, go ahead and do the operation. I'm ready for whatever may come. And after the surgery, the sister comes into the recovery room and he says to her, good morning. And indeed, they had to remove the tumor and had not affected his speech or memory or abilities to read or write or understand. And when he gets out of the hospital, doesn't go right back into making tons of money and just building up all these fun toys that he had. Instead, he spends his time working with other people, counseling other people that have cancer like he had. He spends his time going within and deciding what's really important in life. Now, we don't all have to have a brain tumor or a stroke or anything else to come to the realization of what's important, you know, to listen to our hearts, to live a path with heart. We don't have to do that. With some people, for him, that's what it took. I know one of the things he talks about in this book, Jack Hornfield, he says, you know, it's important, he thinks, for us to consider every day our own mortality. Think about this body dying. And I know that for some people seems kind of morbid, and yet I think what the point is, if we consider, yeah, we're all going to die. We know that intellectually. We know we're all going to die. This shell of a body going to be gone. And then what? And how important it is to think about that, not only for maybe to wake us up spiritually and remind us, let me live more with a God-filled life and rely on Spirit to guide me, blah, blah, blah. But just simply to appreciate each day. Seize the day. Enjoy the day. I'm alive today. I know I'm not going to be alive forever. Really enjoy life as we go along. And I'm going to just suggest that this might be a semblance of your homework. Think a little bit about that. Consider during the day, I am going to, at some point, lose this shell of a body. For some of us, it's going to be sooner than others, but, I mean, any of us could get hit by a Mack truck tomorrow. We don't know. We don't know. So it's important to consider that and make sure that we're living our life to the fullest. Some of the people that did this exercise, you know, you don't have to come up with, and the other thing he says, think of how you would be if you knew you were going to die the next day, and think of 2 acts of kindness that in the course of your life you have experienced. What have you done in a kind way for someone else? And he said, it doesn't have to be grandiose, but just let your heart bring up what it wants to bring up. And some of the people brought up things that were quite minute, like some guy remembered, well, I remember I was vying for this parking space and I let the other guy have it. Why did that come up? Just reminded him, that's who I am. That's the kind of person I am, a kind person. One of the people that reported that what she remembered that was kind is that when her father was dying, she went and made sure that he knew she loved him. Another woman remembered, she was a teacher, and she remembered comforting a crying child. You know, it doesn't have to be grandiose, but just think, let come up what wants to come up. What kindness did you do in your life? If you can't come up with something, call somebody. It's got a major problem there. Think of something kind that you did in your life. So Mother Teresa says, we cannot do great things. We can only do small things with great love. And I think she knew from whereof she spoke. So let's listen to that still small voice within each of us and do what is ours to do with a great love. And I would like to invite you right now to be prepared. I will do a spiritual mind treatment regarding these words that I have just shared with you. I say these words in first person as though it's for me, and it is also for you. So just take a deep breath and just relax where you're at. No place to go, no place to be. Right here, right now. And I know there is but one power in the universe, and that power is a power for good. That power is a power that's ready, willing, and able to shower my life with all the good that I could possibly need. If that power were the ocean, I am like a wave on that ocean. I am of that essence, like Jeff was saying earlier. I am of the same essence that created everything there is. It is one with me. It experienced life in, through, and as its creation. And knowing that these words have power, I declare that even though my life hasn't always been a flower, spirit-filled life, sometimes I've chosen to wallow in my self-pity. Sometimes I've allowed fear to bring me down. Even though I've not always been a good example of a spirit-filled, spirit-led life, even though all that, I now know that I can indeed let goodness permeate my life. I choose to let Spirit imbue and saturate and really infuse my life with good. I do put myself in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom that flows into me as life, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says. I am without effort impelled to truth and right, perfect contentment. My warrior heart lets me face my life honestly. I don't have to stuff anything anymore. I can look those monsters in the eye and know that that power within leads me to my good. I listen to that inner wisdom. And I accept that this life on this earth plane is limited. At some point, I know that this shell of a body will leave me, and I declare I know that that essence of God, infinite power, lives on. So in gratitude that this goodness indeed permeates my life, saturates my life, imbues my life. And gratitude that this is the way the law works, these words spoken into law, and it is done unto me as I believe. And now I release these words to that higher power that does the work for each. And so it is.